Unexpectedly, she approached me directly, opting not to play games until I stumbled upon her deceit. I found myself at a loss for words. Anger? Confusion? Yes, to both. Would I try to salvage things? Absolutely not. Anthony, I'm not being unreasonable. Seek legal counsel if you must. All I ask is that you continue funding the kids' college education. Besides that, I only want my clothes and jewelry. I sat there, clutching the divorce petition, unopened. What was the use? Julia had already cleared out her belongings without me even noticing. I remained silent, but she persisted in talking. It was her nervous habit. Despite her attempt to appear composed, her rapid speech betrayed her anxiety. I glanced at the papers and smirked inwardly. I think she caught on and started speaking faster. As I rose to my feet, I casually tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Just leave. I got the message. Goodbye. At least she stopped talking. She stumbled over her words as I headed to the kitchen for a cold beer. Instead of finishing her thoughts, my soon-to-be ex-wife turned and walked out the front door for the final time. 10 minutes later, as I delved in my second bottle, my gaze fell upon the package she had left behind. True to her word, it was simple and neat. Alongside, she included a power of attorney, enabling me to sell the house. We had recently taken out a second mortgage to cover our sons Kevin and Marcus' college tuition. Selling the house now wouldn't even yield enough profit to offset the realtor's commission. What had brought 2 decades of marriage to an abrupt halt? An old flame, Gabriel Bryant, her first love. Julia and Gabriel had been an item for years before I entered the picture. She often spoke of him, and whispers from mutual friends persisted over the years. I brushed them off. He was merely an ex-boyfriend, or so I thought. Now I realize it was more complex than that. Lost in thought, I suddenly noticed the encroaching darkness in the room. Knocking over 3 empty bottles, I reached for the end table lamp. Just then, the doorbell chimed. Damn it. What now? I muttered to myself. Anthony, I just heard. Donnie thought I should check on you, said Julia's sister Karen. I always favored Karen. Truth be told, I preferred her company to Julia's. In my inebriated state, my thoughts wandered into dangerous territory. Donnie, my best friend, shouldn't have his wife even remotely crossing my mind. I shook my head, attempting to clear the fog of alcohol and restore some semblance of rationality. Karen gently guided me to the kitchen, her touch prompting a slight resistance from me. I didn't appreciate being treated like an invalid. I was perfectly capable of managing on my own. The harsh fluorescent lighting aggravated my eyes, but I pushed through the discomfort with a squint. How many beers had I downed already? I managed to gulp down about half of the coffee before realizing Karen hadn't said a word. Feeling any better, Anthony? Can we talk now? She finally asked. Just give me a minute. I need to use the bathroom, I replied, making my way back shortly after to find my cup topped off. So, Karen, tell me about my dear wife and Gabriel Bryant. When did all of this come to light? My clueless brother-in-law only just found out this afternoon. Don't be too hard on yourself, Anthony. I always suspected she held a flame for that jerk, even after you two got married, Karen admitted. It would have been helpful if you had mentioned something 20 years ago, I grumbled. Come on, Anthony. I wasn't about to stick my nose into that mess. I hope she let go of him over time. You two seemed so happy together, Karen explained. Karen, it wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Looking back, our relationship was more platonic than romantic most of the time. I tried everything over the years, but I could never truly ignite her passion. Flowers, candy, jewelry, none of it made a difference. We got along sure, hardly ever argued. I think I understand why now, I confessed. You did a good job of hiding it, I remarked. Thanks. Can I snag a few of those oatmeal cookies in the canister behind you? My stomach's been yelling at me, Karen replied. So spill it, sister-in-law. What made my wife decide to leave me? I inquired. You might recall, Gabriel dropped out of high school and joined the Air Force. Right after that, you and Julia started dating. Gabriel was Julia's first love, if you catch my drift, Karen explained. I nodded and shrugged simultaneously. A woman never forgets her first love. Anyway, she was pretty upset when you left. She wanted a family and kids. I guess she saw you as the one to fulfill that role. I thought she made a smart choice. I had no clue she was just using you until that jerk came back. Heck, I don't even think she knew he was coming back, Karen elaborated. Why is he back now? I inquired. He completed 20 years in the Air Force, retired as a major with a nice pension, and has several executive positions lined up in the area for his second career. Julia was telling me about it, sounding proud, like she was part of his military success. Honestly, Anthony, it made me feel queasy, Karen confessed. So she's moved in with him, I asked. He's renting a condo in Berkshire Heights until he finds a permanent home. Julia's completely moved in with him, Karen confirmed. How long has he been back? I probed. Not entirely sure, but I reckon about 3 weeks. He called her as soon as he got back into town, Karen answered. So I've been a fool for that long, I muttered. Looks that way. Sorry, Karen said sympathetically, attempting to refill my coffee cup, which I declined. I don't need more coffee. All I want now is a shower and a decent night's sleep. Thanks for coming by, Karen. Lock up when you leave, I said, mustering a weak smile as I exited the room. My sister-in-law's expression mirrored my own sadness as I left. I felt relieved that the boys were no longer living at home. Having to explain what had happened would have been awkward. They would eventually find out, but I hoped to have regained my composure by then so I wouldn't seem so pitiful. My career choice wasn't particularly ambitious, but I found fulfillment in my work. I managed the produce section at one of the larger supermarkets in town. Despite the company's persistent efforts to promote me to a managerial position over the past decade, I resisted due to the long hours and heavy responsibilities. However, those concerns were irrelevant now. Bright and early the next morning, I phoned my district supervisor and expressed my readiness to advance. By that afternoon, I was assigned to take charge of a new store just 10 miles away from home. After 3 days of training in Baltimore, I dove into my new role. During my spare moments, I informed the boys about the situation with their mother, listed the house for sale, and reorganized all my credit card and banking accounts. Although Julia's car was registered in her name, I swiftly removed it from my insurance policy. Emphasis on the word was. Launching a new store demanded a significant portion of my time, which I welcome as a distraction from my personal turmoil. Thanks to the company's streamlined procedures, most challenges were easily overcome. Corporate provided experienced store openers to assist during the initial 2 weeks, easing the transition. Half of the staff were seasoned employees transferred from other local stores. With their support and my confidence in the role, I felt comfortable navigating the job's demands. Before long, things had settled into a rhythm. With everything under control and running smoothly at the store, I found the time to begin organizing my personal affairs. Since I intended to secure a small apartment near the store, I embarked on the task of purging unnecessary items from the house. Most of it, I simply gave away. Numerous local agencies were eager to accept nearly anything I was willing to part with. Naturally, the first to go was the marital bed. Disposing of the wedding pictures and family photos brought me a sense of satisfaction, although I did keep a small collection of pictures featuring the boys. Donnie phoned, insisting I join him for a cookout at his place the following Sunday. He'd assured me Julia wouldn't be present and wanted to update me on the latest regarding Gabriel Bryant, the local war hero. The cookout turned out to be a low-key affair. Donnie and Karen's 2 teenage daughters made a brief appearance before disappearing, leaving Donnie and me to our conversation. Karen spent most of the afternoon ensuring we had a steady supply of cold beer and tidying up after Donnie's culinary endeavors. All right, Donnie, what's the scoop on Mr. or should I say Major Bryant? I inquired. All I've gathered, Anthony, is what he's been sharing at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall. Gabriel and Julia have been dropping by a couple of times a week. He's all about grandstanding and shaking hands. The guys seem impressed, but I reckon it's just because he's something new. Most of the regulars there are pushing 60, Donnie replied. And where's my devoted wife while he's busy showing off? I inquired. Julia usually stands by his side, beaming with pride, Donnie replied. Humph, she never acted like that when we were together, I grumbled. Don't take it personally, Anthony. You're not exactly a decorated war hero, Donnie chuckled, though I didn't find it amusing. Anthony, he wears a baseball cap with that major insignia proudly displayed. Even his car sports a tag with that gold oak leaf. He's pulling out all the stops to impress everyone with his rank, Donnie explained. Something felt off about Major Bryant. I finished my beer just as Karen arrived with fresh ones. Donnie, Gabriel never even finished high school. How did he become an officer? I recall they scrapped the Mustang program years ago. Nowadays, you need a degree to commission. How did that guy manage to get a college degree when he couldn't even earn a high school diploma? I questioned. Valid point. I don't have an answer, Donnie admitted. Did he really join the VFW? I asked. Yes, he signed up the first week he got back, Donnie confirmed. Can you fetch a copy of his membership application for me? I requested. No problem. Why? Donnie inquired. I just want to look into a few things, I replied cryptically. Karen interjected, urging us to lighten the mood. I couldn't recall what we ended up discussing, but as I headed home a few hours later, a mischievous grin played across my face. The following week started off smoothly. The divorce paperwork was underway, with 3 interested buyers eyeing the house and the realtor expressing optimism. Work was humming along until Thursday, when I found Lucy Sanchez waiting for me in my office. Lucy was the supervisor of my midnight stalking crew, having been promoted and transferred from a store across town to the new location. All I knew about her was that she was a diligent worker. Her promotion and accompanying raise were universally acknowledged as well-deserved. Losing Lucy would pose a challenge I wasn't keen on facing. "I hope you're not here to lodge a complaint, Mrs. Sanchez," I greeted her, sensing her nervousness despite her smile. "Not exactly a complaint, Mr. Clark, but I could use some assistance," she replied. "Go ahead. I'll do what I can," I offered. "I have 2 sons, aged 15 and 16. They both have part-time jobs after school. Despite their best efforts, they struggle to catch their school bus at 7 a.m. some days. When I return home after 8, they're still in bed. It's not laziness, just exhaustion. I need to get them going in the mornings," she explained. "You're asking for a raise so they can quit their jobs," I clarified. "No, not at all. They work to save for college. They excel academically, but I need to ensure they make it to school," she replied. "What exactly are you expecting me to do?" I asked. "Help," she replied earnestly. I found it intriguing that she wasn't complaining. Here was a no-nonsense woman accustomed to running a tight ship, yet struggling with her own kids. A slight chuckle escaped me, earning a sharp retort in response. "It's not amusing, Mr. Clark. If you can't offer some form of assistance, I'll have to start looking for another job," Mrs. Sanchez retorted sternly. "That's ironic, Mrs. Sanchez. You oversee a team of individuals who, given the chance, might mess things up. Yet they don't, because they respect you and your standards. But when it comes to these 2 young fellows, they seem to be taking advantage. Where's their father in all of this?" I questioned. Mrs. Sanchez's demeanor shifted, her eyes flashing with anger as she started to rise from her seat. For a moment, I feared I had pushed her too far. "You're an arrogant jerk, Mr. Clark. Everyone praised your intelligence and fairness, but it seems they were mistaken. I didn't come here to be insulted," she snapped. "Please calm down and take a seat. I have a potential solution," I interjected, hoping to diffuse the tension. Reluctantly, she settled back into her chair, though her expression remained sour. "I propose shifting your working hours. You'll start at 11, giving you ample time to organize the inventory for the night crew arriving at 12. You'll work until 6, when the first of the day shift supervisors arrives. They'll take over the remainder of your shift, allowing you to head home in time to see your boys off to school and perhaps even prepare them breakfast," I suggested. "That sounds promising, except for one issue. I need a minimum of 38 scheduled hours to maintain my health insurance. Losing it is not an option for me," she countered. She was correct, but I wasn't finished yet. "Do you attend church, Lucy?" I inquired. "Damn it, there we go again. You really know how to push someone's buttons. What does my church attendance have to do with my job?" she snapped. "You're quite fiery, Lucy. I'd appreciate it if you could calm down while I finish," I requested. "And stop with the Mrs. Sanchez business. I'm not married. I suppose you have a witty comment about that too," she retorted, clearly irked. I felt my patience waning with her attitude. With a sigh, I leaned back in my chair only to topple over backward. For a brief moment, I found myself staring up at the ceiling, noting the cheap-looking light fixtures. I heard her stifled laughter as she peered over the desk at me, her hand darting to cover her smile. "Sorry," she managed to say between giggles. I felt embarrassed by my clumsiness while she found amusement in it. It took a moment to compose myself as I readjusted in my seat. "If I can't call you Mrs. Sanchez, what should I call you?" I asked. "Just Lucy," she replied curtly. "Lucy, I have 2 supervisors who are Southern Baptists. Neither will work Sunday mornings, leaving me to fill in. I want you to work from 6 to noon on Sundays. That'll cover the extra hours you need, although that's not the crucial point," I explained. "It matters to me," Lucy insisted. "You're paying extra for the family health insurance plan, correct?" I continued. "Yes, it's $80 a month, covering both my boys as well," she confirmed. "Lucy, I'm going to transition you to a salary position. That means your boys will automatically be covered under your insurance. Additionally, they'll receive a small raise," I informed her. "And it also means I won't qualify for overtime, right?" Lucy deduced. "Correct," I affirmed. She remained silent for a moment, her striking appearance capturing my attention. Her hair, dark but not quite black, framed her face elegantly, while her eyes, as deep and dark as coal, held an intensity that was hard to ignore. There wasn't an ounce of excess fat on her, giving her a slightly gaunt appearance. I found myself wondering about the figure hidden beneath her work attire before she finally spoke up. "Okay, I'll accept it, but I have no experience dealing with daytime supervision. I've never had to interact with customers," she confessed. "Don't worry about it. I'll be there for the first 4 shifts to guide you. There's no way you can mess it up," I assured her. And so began my relationship with Lucy Sanchez. It was undoubtedly stressful, and at that point, I never imagined it would develop into something significant. Initially, I anticipated Lucy would stay for 6 hours on Sunday morning, but we ended up working late into the evening. She was adamant about learning every aspect of her new responsibilities, and I found myself enjoying her company. As I glanced through the Sunday paper, I stumbled upon a small article about a fundraiser at the local American Legion post. Major Gabriel Bryant stood proudly in his full uniform alongside my estranged wife. Seeing her in the photo looking as proud as if she had earned the medals herself was a bitter pill to swallow. I didn't reconnect with Donnie until Monday evening. Karen had called me at work, insisting I join them for spaghetti. How could I refuse? Donnie handed me Gabriel's VFW membership application and his discharge papers. I shared with him about the photo in the Sunday paper, and he promised to obtain the forms from the American Legion post as well. Karen had caught wind at the beauty shop that Gabriel had applied for membership at the Liberty Keys Country Club. Julia and I attempted to join once, only to face rejection. While I shrugged it off, Julia was devastated. According to Karen, it seemed Gabriel's application was practically pre-approved. The week crawled by slowly. I had already secured a small apartment where I typically headed straight after work to unwind with at least 3 beers, sometimes more. Thankfully, the rent included basic cable, so boredom wasn't a constant companion. Next week, I was set to have my DSL internet connection installed. The week concluded on a positive note when I discovered an invitation on my desk for dinner with Lucy and her 2 sons. Although I already had her address and phone number, she insisted on providing them again. It felt a bit awkward and potentially a breach of the company fraternization policy. To err on the side of caution, I contacted my boss in Baltimore to explain the situation. After receiving his approval, I felt more at ease about the whole affair. I picked up a bottle of wine to bring along, but I was unsure what to bring for the boys. Meeting Lucy's sons made me a tad nervous, but once they learned I had 2 sons in college, the atmosphere lightened considerably. Poor Lucy found herself somewhat excluded from most of the conversations. Despite my efforts to involve her, she gave me a small grimace as if to convey that I needn't worry about it. She appeared content that I had hit it off with Grant and James. The evening passed by all too quickly, and unfortunately, we never got around to opening the wine. That Sunday, I spent around 2 hours with Lucy as she embarked on her first official shift as a supervisor. I sensed her eagerness for me to leave so she could spread her wings independently. It was a positive sign in my book. She assured me she'd reach out if any issues arose, and even invited me over for supper that evening. After dinner, Grant and James mysteriously disappeared, leaving Lucy and me alone. We tackled the dinner dishes together before finally uncorking that bottle of wine. The conversation started off a bit awkwardly. Apart from our professional interactions, our relationship had remained strictly business. Lucy seemed a bit disheartened when I explained the potential complications our relationship could bring, but she quickly brushed it off, expressing confidence that any issues could be easily resolved. While I didn't broach the topic, Lucy felt compelled to shed light on her marital status. She revealed that she had been living with the boy's father in Tucson until one day he vanished without a trace. Despite waiting for 3 years, he never returned. Her brother, a bricklayer in the Philadelphia area, convinced her to move in with him and his family. Eventually, she found her own place and has been working tirelessly ever since to provide for her boys. She never remarried. As I finished recounting my own marital woes, the wine bottle emptied. Despite the heavy subject matter, I found solace in Lucy's company. We spent several hours together, so the wine consumption wasn't a concern when I eventually drove home. For several days, everything proceeded as usual both at work and in my personal life. Donnie paid me a visit one evening armed with information from the American Legion post. We shared a few beers as we pondered our next steps now that we had all the necessary background details. However, a few beers turned out to be a bit too much, and Karen had to come over to collect her inebriated husband. I ended up being tardy for work the following morning, but fortunately, no one complained given my position as the boss and my usual punctuality. Friday morning brought another unexpected twist. 3 of the company's vice presidents made an appearance, conducting a cursory walkthrough of the store that felt rather insincere. It all became clear during our lunch break. Apparently, there was a significant shortage of supermarket managers, or so it appeared to me. Before the meal concluded, I was offered a role as a regional supervisor overseeing 6 stores within a 30-mile radius. The salary and benefits offered far exceeded my expectations, prompting me to accept without hesitation. My second-in-command at the current store was pleasantly surprised when I handed over the entire operation to him. I made just one request to leave Lucy untouched. A wink and a smile from him indicated we were on the same page. While Lucy was naturally saddened to see me leave the store, she was pleased about my promotion. I took her out for a nice dinner, which you could say marked our first official date. The boys were thrilled to give us a night out together. It also marked the first time I saw her dressed up and made up. She looked absolutely stunning. She seemed to accept my promotion more readily when I assured her I'd still be working and living in the area. However, she wasn't thrilled to hear that I had to travel to Baltimore for 2 weeks of training. I enjoyed Sunday lunch with Donnie and Karen, celebrating my recent good fortune while doing my best to abstain from drinking. I had plans to make the short drive to Maryland that evening to ensure I'd be fresh for my first day of training. Donnie couldn't help but ask what my plans were regarding Gabriel and Julia. I explained that it would have to wait until I completed my training and settled into my new position. Every day, sometimes twice, Lucy and I talked on the phone. It felt like we were teenagers again. She eagerly inquired about my training, and I made sure to ask about what was happening on her end, particularly with the boys. It seemed she appreciated my interest in them. My new job brought unexpected responsibilities, including a strong emphasis on community involvement. I was expected to join various civic and social organizations, even the local country club. It amused me to learn that my position with the company would practically guarantee my acceptance anywhere I applied. Life seemed to be smiling upon me. Returning home for the first weekend, I saw Lucy twice. I experienced my first kiss with her, though I couldn't shake a sense of discomfort given my ongoing marital status. She teased me about my uncertainty, and we shared a laugh over it. Her playful demeanor was infectious, and I found myself enjoying every moment. The company had rented a small office in one of the local business complexes, fully equipped with a secretary. It was evident they had done this before, as everything was set up and ready to go. I was prepared to dive into my new responsibilities headfirst on the first day. Among the papers on my desk sat my application for full membership at the Liberty Keys Country Club. It was a simple task, just sign it and collect my membership card. I decided that would be my first order of business. Dressed in a sharp new suit and driving my sleek new company car, I felt on top of the world as I strolled into the club lobby. That is, until I spotted Julia. She stood among a group of women, sporting a charming tennis outfit. I hadn't known she played tennis. In an instant, the pain and humiliation of her betrayal flooded back, shattering my confidence. My swagger vanished as I tried to discreetly navigate past the group. However, my attempt to remain unnoticed was thwarted when one of the women remarked, "Isn't that your husband walking in?" Refusing to turn back, I maintained my composure as I handed my application to the attendant. He disappeared into a back room, leaving me to wait anxiously for the impending confrontation. I braced myself for the unpleasant exchange, but my mind drew a blank, leaving me without a clever retort to combat the situation. "Anthony, what are you doing here? This area is for members only, you know. You're not attempting to join again, are you?" Julia's tone was laced with a mix of surprise and discomfort. "Hello, Julia," I greeted her, trying to maintain a composed demeanor. "You're looking well. Nice outfit. Is it new? I didn't know you played tennis." My attempt at casual conversation felt forced, and I couldn't help but stumble over my words. The nervousness was evident in my awkward babbling, and I felt a pang of embarrassment. Julia explained, "I'm taking lessons, Anthony. I've always wanted to play tennis, but we could never afford it." Her response left me with nothing more than a smile in return. "You really shouldn't be here, Anthony. This is very uncomfortable for me. It's members only, you know," Julia persisted, her discomfort palpable. As the attendant returned with my membership materials, I accepted them graciously, nodding a silent thank you. Julia stood there, her expression puzzled, as I turned to leave. With a grin, I said nothing more as I made my way back through the club lobby. Tempted to look back as I exited, I resisted, maintaining my smile all the way back to the office. Later that evening, I treated Lucy to dinner at Red Lobster. While I had no intention of gloating, I couldn't help but derive some satisfaction from recounting my encounter with Julia earlier. We shared a few giggles over the situation, though our meal remained devoid of wine as Lucy had to be at work by 11. Lucy promised to join me at the club for a late lunch on Sunday once she finished her shift. Secretly, I found myself hoping we'd encounter Gabriel and Julia there. The week proceeded smoothly until Friday. Molly, my new secretary, who was now aware of my marital issues, greeted me with a grin as I entered the office. On my desk lay the local newspaper, featuring a photo of Gabriel Bryant in handcuffs being escorted into a plain black car. It turned out Gabriel hadn't realized that the American Legion thoroughly vetted their applicants to prevent undeserving veterans from slipping through. Although he had retired from the Air Force, it was as a technical surgeon, not a major. The revelation that he wore unearned medals would surely add to his troubles. They referred to it as stolen valor, a serious offense not taken lightly. I had a peculiar feeling that Gabriel Bryant was about to face a significant loss of reputation in our hometown. Molly brought me a cup of coffee and remarked that it was okay to smile. Her comment did indeed elicit a grin from me. About an hour later, I received a call from a realtor with the news that the house had been sold and closing was set for 2 weeks later. Just when I thought things couldn't get any better, my final divorce papers arrived in the mail. It seemed that Gabriel had used his connections to expedite the process. It was clear we weren't friends anymore. The day and the week were ending on a high note. Donnie stopped by to check out my new office, but his real purpose was to inform me that Julie had moved in with him and Karen. Although he wasn't thrilled about the new house guest, he couldn't contain his excitement about the turn of events. Donnie readily agreed to join me for a celebration at the local corner bar as long as I was buying. Before Lucy left for work, I called her and shared all the good news with her. She seemed just as thrilled as I was. Donnie dragged me out of bed on Saturday morning, and I was grateful for his stronger tolerance for alcohol. We headed to Shawnee's for the breakfast buffet and some much-needed coffee. Over our meal, Donnie filled me in on the latest developments regarding my ex-wife. Her car had been repossessed. It turned out Gabriel had been supposedly covering her payments, but the checks bounced. She was left completely unaware until they came to take the car away. It seemed Gabriel's deception extended to other aspects as well. It was a scheme that had deceived many before it unraveled. Karen had given Julia a week's stay at their place, but Julia was left with no clear plan for the future. Her financial situation, already precarious after the divorce, had worsened. By the time we returned home, Lucy was still fast asleep, but Grant and James were eager to hit the golf course at Liberty Keys. Lucy gave us a playful scolding for leaving her out of the fun when she woke up. We settled for pizza delivery and a pay-per-view movie for the evening. Despite the upheavals elsewhere, life felt good in our little bubble. Sunday morning, Lucy and I enjoyed a pleasant brunch at the country club. I had secretly hoped to run into Julia and Gabriel, but they were nowhere to be seen. Though there were a few curious glances our way, overall, it was a delightful outing. It marked the beginning of many more enjoyable brunches together. Before the week was out, Julia found a small furnished apartment to move into after leaving Donnie and Karen's house. While they kept in touch, their relationship wasn't as close as before, despite being sisters. 3 months later, Kevin and Marcus returned home for our wedding. They playfully teased me about needing to find 2 replacements for them. Fortunately, the 4 boys hit it off, much to Lucy's and my delight. Surprisingly, Kevin and Marcus never brought up Julia during their visit. It wasn't a conscious effort to avoid the topic, it simply never arose. Whether they stopped by to see her before heading back to school remained unknown. Donnie served as my best man, though his role was more of a witness in our civil ceremony. Lucy decided to stop working before the wedding, and I insisted that Grant and James quit their jobs to focus on their studies. Thankfully, they didn't protest. Despite not making much profit from selling the old house, buying a new one posed no difficulty. 2 months after our wedding, Lucy and I were doing some Christmas shopping at Target when we unexpectedly ran into Julia. She was stationed at the customer service counter, clad in the standard Target attire of khaki pants and a red shirt. It seemed she had lost weight. Our eyes met briefly before she retreated into the office behind the counter. Our encounter wasn't meant to cause her discomfort. Given all she had been through, we decided to leave the store and do our shopping elsewhere from then on. As for Gabriel Bryant, he simply vanished after his arrest and subsequent charges. There were no further updates on his whereabouts. During Christmas at our new house, Kevin and Marcus returned home. However, the holiday took an unexpected turn when Julia showed up. Lucy had extended the invitation without informing me. Initially, I felt frustrated, but I soon recognized Lucy's gesture as both gracious and bold. Confronting Julia was necessary for closure. Though I never forgave her for her actions, knowing she understood the consequences brought some solace. Life moved on in a way I never could have predicted. With Lucy by my side, I found a kind of happiness I hadn't even realized was missing. The boys flourished in their studies, and I settled into my new role with confidence. Though the scars of betrayal remained, they no longer defined me. Instead, they became reminders of what I'd survived, and how much better my life had become in the end. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.